He walked in with nothing more than a quiet smile, a faded Marine Corps cap, and a loyal service dog by his side. What happened next left the entire restaurant in shock, but nobody expected that just 2 hours later, the very Marines he once served with would come storming through those doors. If you love your mom and dad, hit that subscribe button and show some love to her. The late afternoon sun was just beginning to dip low over the small town, casting a golden haze across the streets as retired Marine Sergeant Daniel Harker pushed open the door to a busy diner. His back was straight, his step steady, but behind his calm expression hid years of pain and battles fought not just overseas, but at home. Beside him, trotting faithfully, was Max, his trained service dog, a German shepherd who had saved Daniel's life more times than he could count. Max wasn't just a companion. He was the reason Daniel could even face crowded rooms and sudden noises without collapsing under the weight of memories he could never erase. The diner smelled of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon. Daniel found a corner booth, quietly settling down with Max tucked neatly at his side. To him, it was just another stop for a simple meal. But as he opened the menu, he noticed eyes shifting toward him. Whispers. A manager approaching with a tight smile that held no warmth. "Sir," the manager began, voice firm but dismissive, "pets aren't allowed in here." Daniel calmly explained, "He's not a pet. He's a service dog. Federal law allows him to be here." But the manager's frown deepened. "Rules are rules. You need to leave." The room grew uncomfortably quiet. A few patrons looked away, embarrassed, while others pulled out their phones, sensing something was about to unfold. Daniel held his ground respectfully, his voice steady but firm, repeating that Max was his service dog. The manager wasn't interested in explanations. Within moments, Daniel, decorated veteran, Purple Heart recipient, a man who had given nearly 2 decades of his life to the country, was being ushered out the door like an unwelcome guest. That he walked out silently, Max pressed close to his leg. But deep inside, humiliation and anger burned like fire. Not for himself, he'd endured worse, but for the principle. The very freedoms he had fought to protect were being trampled in front of strangers, by someone who couldn't see past a dog's leash. Daniel didn't argue. He simply left. But someone else inside had been recording everything. The clip spread quickly across town and onto social media. And that's when the story took a sharp turn nobody expected. 2 hours later, as the evening crowd began to fill the diner, the sound of heavy boots echoed across the parking lot. One by one, Marines, both active duty and retired, began filing in. Some wore uniforms, others civilian clothes, but each one carried the same determined look. Word had spread among Daniel's old unit. And when Marines hear that a brother has been disrespected, they do not stay silent. The door swung open, and suddenly, the diner that had coldly rejected a veteran was surrounded by men and women who had served under the same flag. The chatter died instantly as nearly 24 Marines filled the restaurant, shoulders squared, eyes sharp. At the center, they cleared a space and in walked Daniel once more, Max calmly at his side. The manager froze. His face drained of color. He tried to stammer something about misunderstanding, but the Marines weren't interested in excuses. They didn't raise their voices, they didn't threaten, but their presence spoke louder than any words could. The restaurant, once bustling with casual chatter, now pulsed with tension and anticipation. A staff member timidly offered Daniel a seat. Another quietly placed a menu in front of him. But this time, nobody dared ask him to leave. In fact, one of the Marines, a tall, broad-shouldered man who had served under Daniel years before, spoke for the entire room. "This man has led Marines into combat. He's bled for this country. You don't get to tell him or his service dog they aren't welcome." Customers began applauding. Some stood up in respect, clapping louder, while others pulled out their phones to record the dramatic moment. Strangers approached Daniel to shake his hand, thanking him for his service, but just when it seemed the story had reached its peak, another twist hit. The local news station had picked up the viral video. Within an hour, reporters were outside the diner. Lights, cameras, and microphones surrounded the entrance as the manager scrambled nervously, realizing his decision had sparked a storm much bigger than he could control. Daniel, however, remained calm. He didn't gloat, didn't raise his voice, didn't humiliate the man who had humiliated him. Instead, he stood before the cameras and said words that silenced everyone. "I didn't come here looking for trouble. I came here for dinner with the one partner who's never left my side. My dog isn't just a dog, he's part of how I survive. I hope people watching this remember that respect doesn't cost a dime. It's free. But its impact lasts a lifetime." The footage went viral nationwide. Veterans groups rallied behind Daniel. Thousands of comments flooded in, both condemning the diner's treatment and praising the Marines who stood by their brother. The manager issued a public apology, but the damage was done. The story became a powerful reminder that respect for veterans and their service animals isn't just a courtesy, it's the law. But what truly shocked people came days later, when Daniel was invited back to the diner. Not for punishment, not for confrontation, but for recognition. The restaurant had decided to dedicate a table, permanently reserved in honor of veterans and their service animals. At the center of that table sat a polished plaque engraved with the words, "For those who served, and the friends who never leave their side." Daniel, humble as always, accepted quietly, but deep inside he knew it wasn't about him. It was about every veteran who had been dismissed, disrespected, or forgotten. It was about ensuring that Max, and service dogs everywhere, were seen not as pets, but as lifelines. The Marines, of course, were there again. Sitting proudly in their booth, they raised a toast not only to their brother but to every man and woman who had carried the weight of freedom on their shoulders. And as the applause filled the diner, something remarkable had shifted. What began as a story of humiliation had turned into a powerful movement of respect, unity, and unwavering loyalty, values that Marines live by every single day. So remember this: behind every quiet veteran sitting in a restaurant, behind every service dog lying silently by their feet, there is a story, a sacrifice, and a courage you may never fully understand. Now tell me, where are you watching this from? Which part of the country are you tuning in?